Abduction.
It's alive! It's alive!
A creature like that. How would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. It's horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Hello, friends. Hello. And welcome in. I'm still doing just a few last minute setup procedures. If you'll bear with me just a tiny moment. I should have done all this already. I was on the phone. With our buddy Aeon. We'll get to that here in just a minute. All right. I think I figured out how to get speech chat out on the stream now. Don't know why I didn't think about this sooner. Let's give it a test. Nope, I didn't hear that. Oh, geez. We're just cursed when it comes to speech chat, I guess. Try that one more time. Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. I'm seeing it in speech chat, but I'm not hearing it. So, oh well. That was a bad idea. Let's close that, get rid of this. However, this works. I will pull up speech chat on my laptop, so it'll be in my ears. So if somebody does pop in to say hello, I can hear them. Let me try this one. Okay, that one I heard. Good. Good deal. Let me make sure I have that over on a separate screen so I can see what's going on. All right, speech chat is up. All right. Get some monitoring software running. I think we're good. So, geez, here we go. All right, so let me make sure I don't have any. Okay. Good deal. Looks good. Dang, as soon as I go to set my freaking phone down, it goes off again. eBay's pushing hard today. Pushing hard. Welcome, friends. Welcome. My name is Victus. This is Beyond the Shadows podcast. You might first and foremost notice that I am alone yet again. Aeon and Paul have some personal things they need to step away for a few weeks. They will return sooner than later. I don't want to delve too much into their personal business. They will be back. Don't you worry. But in the meantime, you're stuck with me. I know y'all are really anticipating that. So it's not going to be so bad, I don't guess. Admittedly understand that the banter is not there. But, you got to take care of personal business. You got to take care of personal business. That's just the way it is. So, you're stuck with me. And without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Season 2, Episode 14 of Beyond the Shadows podcast, where we go over the world's most mysterious and paranormal cases and decide whether they are really paranormal or not. I am your intrepid paranormal investigator host, Victus, and this week we are going to cover what is called the third man syndrome. This one's really, really interesting. So I did do some deep dive research into this many months ago, and this is just a wild case. It's what gets me is there's historical basis behind some of this stuff. So, what we're going to go over tonight is a real event, and it's hard to put into words without really diving into the meat of what the podcast is about this week. But so before we get going, my plan was to see if there was any paranormal news this week. And see if we have anything noteworthy to talk about. Let's see, anything noteworthy? Nothing. TV shows. Chinese man trapped in a well for 3 days as villagers mistake his cries for ghost sounds. It wasn't until police dispatched rescue personnel to the forest that they heard the voice responding to their calls. This was December 4th, 2024. Yeah, the paranormal news in general is really kind of thin right now. Lots and lots of TV shows. Research shows link between paranormal beliefs and sleep deprivation. I know that one's true. Oh my gosh. Geez. Mysterious pale figure caught on CCTV sparks debate among paranormal enthusiasts. 33-second video shows a pale, human-like figure. It appears lanky and hunched over near the back of a garden of a home. Geez, yeah, it shows a couple screenshots. That's pretty spooky. Video of a motorcycle moving on its own. Yeah, it looks like that's about it. Geez, kind of boring this week. Any hoots. So, this won't be as fun without Ayan and Paul here, but I will continue to do our shirt segment. So without further ado. Ba, 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 ba. Oh wait, no, we have that sound. Hold on, wait. What shirt are you wearing today? So for me, I'm wearing my BMO Halloween shirt. I love me some Adventure Time. BMO is my spirit animal. I have said it for many, many years, and I will continue to say it. BMO is my spirit animal, and if you get BMO chopped around me, just know that if it were a real attack, you'd be dead. So, love me some BMO. BMO is my throwback to when I was first streaming on Twitch. I would use BMO clips, audio clips, on my soundboard, and I like to think that people liked it. I don't know. It's hard to gauge it. It's hard to say what people like or don't like. So, yeah. I don't think there's anything really newsworthy to talk about this eve. Probably these episodes are going to be cut down a little bit shorter than normal until Ayan and Paul have returned. So, that being said, we're going to get into it. So I don't know how many of you have heard of the third man syndrome, what it is. Some people call it the third man syndrome. I've heard some of the experiences called as the third man, what's the word? Phenomena, because it's more of an event than it is a syndrome. If you ask me, it is absolutely bizarre. So this has historical basis. I know it does. We have some. So in our research for this week, we've got. We're starting out on historical records, and it just gets wild from here. So let's just I'm just gonna run through this script. I wrote this thing out, so we might as well read it and have some fun with it. Well, if you're ready, I'm ready. You guys ready? Because I'm ready. You ready? Yeah. Oh, good for me. Yeah. All right. That's right. So, before we begin unraveling the mystery of the third man syndrome, let me take you back to a time long before the term even existed. A time when a harrowing journey through the most hostile environment on Earth gave us the first written clue of something, someone, otherworldly walking beside the doomed and the desperate. The year is 1916. The world is in the grip of World War I, but thousands of miles away from the trenches of Europe in the frozen heart of Antarctica, British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton is facing a war of his own. Let's see. Should we switch over? I'll show you some pictures of Shackleton. Let me pull some up. Sir Ernest Shackleton. Here we go. Let me switch scenes. What? All right. This is Sir Ernest Shackleton. Excuse me. He was a Irish explorer, born February of 1874, died in January 1922, and he was an Antarctic explorer who led 3 British expeditions to the Antarctic. Very, very famous explorer. Look, he was out in the stuff. Like, his ship was icebound. Like, let's pull this up. Look at that. Jeez. Could you imagine a wooden ship crushed in the ice like that? I don't want to get too much into the business of him, but it's more about what he experienced. So he did do a bunch of expeditions to the Antarctic, and his most famous was this one where he was stranded. His ship became ice locked, and they were stuck in the ice. It was a mess. So let me switch over. We'll leave this picture running. His ship, the Endurance, meant to conquer the uncharted terrain of the South Pole, had been crushed by ice. With survival seeming less and less likely, Shackleton and 2 of his men, Frank Worsley and Tom Crean, undertake a final, desperate march across South Georgia Island for 36 hours straight. They travel across glaciers and treacherous mountains, passes with no rest, no food, no guarantee they will make it. But something strange happens on his last leg. And Shackleton later recounts in his memoir, South, that during his ordeal, he had a strong feeling that a fourth presence was walking along beside them. He writes, quote, during that long, racking march of 36 hours over unnamed mountains and glaciers of South Georgia, it seemed to me often that there were 4, not 3, end quote. Even more unsettling, the others felt it too. Though none of them spoke of it at the time, both Worsley and Crean later admitted they also sensed an unseen companion with them, silent, steady, and somehow reassuring. This chilling experience would come to be the first documented case of what we now know as the third man syndrome, an unexplained presence that appears in humanity's darkest hours, of offering guidance, strength, and sometimes even salvation. It is from this historic frostbitten crucible that our story begins, but it is only the beginning, because the third man has walked with many others, Everest climbers, astronauts, disaster survivors, and today we're going to walk alongside them all, and the invisible force that may have helped them live to tell the tale. Yeah, so this is a thing. This is a real thing. So you can actually go out and find his book, South, and this is a whole section of his book. And it is wild. It is absolutely wild. So I'm just going to paraphrase just a little tiny bit. So he talks about how, so you're probably confused. The third man is what they're calling it. Shackleton, 2 guys. already 3 guys on the ice. So when it comes to defining the third man syndrome, we're not saying the fourth man is the third man. We're saying the person perceiving. So say I'm Shackleton. There's 2 others, 1, 2, and the third man, which is the one they don't see. However, this is the one that they said it felt so in some of the texts from South and some firsthand accounts from the survivors said that it almost seemed like this third man with them was leading them, showing them where to go, telling them what to do. And in their moments when they would feel like they would give up, it seemed Shackleton even said that he could see this man ahead of them almost beckoning, telling him to come on, it's just over this hill, it's just over this hill, it's just over this hill. And he gives the credit to surviving to this mysterious third man. And once they were rescued, you know, everybody wanted to know, how did you get out of there? How did you get out? Why did you do it? And they would say, well, where's the guy who was leading us? And they would say, oh, well, there is nobody. It's just you guys. So this is where the third man syndrome comes in, and it becomes a prevalent thing throughout history after this point. So, this is a quote. Let me see, whose quote is this? Nope, it's not a quote. It's just the script is written in a quote. There are moments in life when the odds are stacked against you, when death feels not only possible but imminent. These are the moments where adrenaline kicks in, a fight or flight instinct takes over, and the body pushes itself beyond what should be possible. But what if, in those moments, something else shows up? Not inside of us, but beside us. So today on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are exploring one of the strangest and most mysterious phenomena ever reported by explorers, mountaineers, and even survivors of near-death experiences, the third man syndrome. And cue the music here. Music. Yeah, hey, all right, welcome. Okay, I don't have music. I was actually looking at like some generic filler, like free to use, like game show music, and it is so hard to find game show music that we can use and not get copyright dinged for. We're already getting emails about our royalty free music that we use on the podcast, so that might be weeding out soon. Anywho, the third man syndrome refers to the overwhelming feeling that an unseen presence is accompanying someone through a life-threatening ordeal. It's not just a vague sensation of being watched, it's specific, detailed, and strangely comforting. People report hearing voices, receiving guidance, and even feeling physical hand resting on their shoulder. In many cases, their presences have helped individuals survive the impossible. They are described not as hallucinations, but as protectors, guides, and guardians. The term was popularized by author John Geiger in his 2009 book, The Third Man Factor, in which he documents dozens of such cases across decades and continents. So what exactly is happening here? Is it a psychological trick, a spiritual presence, or something else entirely? And how widespread is this experience? Could it be something more common than we think? Just hidden, unspoken, buried in the trauma of those who experience it? Let's dive in. Let's find out. So there were moments in life when the odds are stacked against you and death feels not only possible but imminent, but these moments where adrenaline kicks in, the fight or flight instinct takes over, the body pushes itself beyond what should be possible. But what if in those moments something else shows up? I just read the same thing again and again. Cool. Wow, I have the same paragraph twice. Let's take a deeper look at some of the most well-documented examples. One of the earliest and most famous accounts is from British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, which is what we opened with. And during his 1916 Antarctic expedition, Shackleton and two of his men were on a desperate trek across South Georgia Island on the ship. Endurance was crushed with ice. They said it was freezing. They were starving, exhausted, trying to find a whaling station to summon rescue for their stranded crew. So what he said in his quote about in the march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains and glaciers of South Georgia, it seemed to me often that there were four, not three. That this was not just the poetic language of Shackleton, but rather he truly believed that there was some other person walking beside them, and so did his companions. Though none of them dared to mention it aloud at the time. But this was not the only case, it was definitely not the only case. This was the first and most prominent. So in 1933, British mountaineer Frank Smythe attempted to summit Mount Everest. At over 28,000 feet, alone and oxygen deprived, Smythe felt a powerful presence walking with him. He was so convinced of its reality, he broke a piece of cake in half and offered it to his invisible companion. Now jump to 1980. On this, oh geez, this is a mountain in Pakistan. I'm probably going to just destroy this name. On the slopes of Nanga Parbat in Pakistan, legendary mountaineer Reinhold Messner found himself in a similarly perilous situation. Alone after a successful but grueling ascent, he described the strong sensation that somebody was with him, walking just behind him. And one of the most dramatic modern examples come from 2001. Ron DeFrancesco, working in the South Tower of the World Trade Center, was on the 84th floor when the second plane hit. He was knocked unconscious by the impact, but awoke to a burning, debris-filled stairwell. He began to descend, but was quickly overwhelmed by smoke and fear. Then he heard a voice. It urged him to get up, to keep going. He says it felt like someone physically was guiding him, touching him on the shoulder, and he escaped just before the tower collapsed. And this isn't just limited to earthbound experiences. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, while on a spacewalk outside the International Space Station in 2001, reported a moment of deep anxiety. His suit alarm had triggered due to high CO2 levels. As panic set in, he suddenly felt calm. He said it was as if somebody reassured him, encouraged him to slow his breathing, and guided him back inside. These cases crossed every boundary, geography, profession, culture. Mountaineers, astronauts, soldiers, civilians, all describing the same eerie, often life-saving presence. And we've only just scratched the surface. We're going to switch scenes here. All right. So now we have some of the lesser known stories and listener submissions. Not all third man experiences make the headlines. And so in 2012, a 29-year-old hiker named Emma Leclerc, got lost in the vast forests of British Columbia. After slipping down a slope and spraining her ankle, she tried to crawl back toward a marked trail. Disoriented and exhausted, she began to cry until she felt a hand on her back. She said it was a firm but gentle hand, and it gave her the strength to push forward. She swears she heard a woman's voice whispering, quote, "You're not done yet." She made it to a ranger station after crawling through the forest for 8 hours. 8 freaking hours. She crawled through the forest for 8 hours. Trying to see if we have. I found a video earlier, and I should have just changed, or I should have saved it. It appears to me that a lot of people are thinking this is something along the lines of a guardian angel. So I'm looking at firsthand accounts, and it appears that most of these firsthand accounts, a lot of people are calling this a guardian angel. You know, I suppose that could just come down to, you know, personal beliefs. You know, I'm digging through these. I'm trying to find something to share with everybody. Lots of crazy, you know, Photoshop pictures of like a ghostly person hiking next to somebody else. Um, you know what? Let's see if we can find something on Reddit right quick. Ha ha ha! Good old Reddit. Good old Reddit. Yeah, there's. Oh, okay. So here is So here's a post from on Reddit from 5 months ago. This guy says, I was in a horrible car accident a few Easters ago. Easters? Oh, geez, it's Easter today. What? Yeah. He said some things some things still don't make sense, but I still have many unanswered questions. Here's the dealio. He actually typed out the words dealio. Kudos to this guy. This is former underscore sock underscore 164 on Reddit. He says, quote, I borrowed my friend's truck to go grocery shopping. It was a late night, and instead of him and his girlfriend taking me, they said I could just return the truck in the morning. As I was pulling off, I rolled down the window, and my friend said, if you wreck, be sure you total it. Which is kind of morbid, but okay, cool, I get it. I didn't think anything of it until months after when I remembered this. Anyways, it was exactly midnight on Easter Sunday, and it started to rain. He says, and this happened when the curfews for COVID kicked in. He's in Dallas, BT Dubs. There was literally nobody else on the highway. Next thing I know, I'm waking up very groggy with the steering wheel in my face. I guess it was adrenaline. I didn't feel any of my injuries at all. I remember having my cell phone and calling my friend Rick to tell him what happened. As I'm trying to explain, a man in green Adidas shirt is walking up to me, seemingly out of nowhere. No car, no bike. He tells me, do I need him to call 911? And frantically I said, no, I need to call my friend. This is his truck. But the feeling that came over me when I looked into his eyes was otherworldly. I was very comfortable, warm, and just knew that it was going to be okay. He walked off seconds later, back into oblivion. And from what my friend said, there was dead air. I stopped talking. He said not even a minute went by, and he heard the sirens, and then a paramedic came on the line and informed him that I had been in a critical accident. They were taking him to a hospital. I woke up 2 days later in my hospital room. My arm was in a sling with metal coming out of it. My face was banged up, and my leg was in a cast. I had no recollection of anything. My phone was sitting on my chest, so I immediately called my dad, who was very worried, not having heard from me in a couple days. I wasn't allowed any visitors because of COVID. He says he underwent 2 surgeries, suffered compound fracture to right arm, broken leg, broken nose, severed broke ribs. When I was discharged, I was able to ask and look for more answers. Apparently, there was a car on the shoulder that had broken down, and I hit it going about 75. Based on where the car ended up, I had never heard of third man syndrome until about a year ago. I was It was a story similar to mine of a girl in a car accident describing what happened to her word for word. I was shook. I have goosebumps right now typing it. Um, I know there would be a lot of you saying, "Oh, you're just imagining things." Probably a real person, blah blah. Uh, but I felt this man comfort my soul just by looking at me. Hope this helps, OP. Good story. So he has a car accident, and this guy comes up out of nowhere and just asks him if he needs help. During COVID too. Like, I don't know about y'all, but if I came across somebody who'd been in a wreck, I was gonna stay until I knew he was picked up, taken care of, and probably once he was picked up, that I would be asked questions about why I was there and all this other stuff, especially during COVID and curfew. Maybe it's why he took off. I don't know. But that seems to be, that's kind of normal for what we're getting at here with this third man syndrome. Mm-hmm. Here we go. We got another one. Let's see. Let me scan through this right quick. Make sure wasn't something. Okay, I'll give this one a go. This is Television No 1082 on Reddit. It says, I was in the attic at a friend's house, moving stuff around for him. He'd warned me that the attic door was broken. Well, of course, I wasn't paying attention and stepped on it. And it was like time slowed down. My mind realized what I'd done, and it was too late to fix that was my own thought. But then another voice, one that definitely was not mine, said, stiffen your body. And I guess I did because I'm not dead. I have no idea how I was physically able to prevent myself from falling through that attic door. I barely remember dragging myself into bed in the bedroom attached to the attic. I immediately fell asleep and slept for a long time. The next day I looked where I almost had fallen through and just started crying. It was about 2-story drop into a cement garage, and there was a giant pole secured to a tire directly under the door. So I would have been impaled, basically. That fall would have killed me or permanently injured me. I've never heard of third man syndrome until a few hours ago when I read the comment on Reddit mentioning it. So it's crazy that others have experienced this as well. I have no idea who or what that voice was. All I know is it was outside. It was an outside voice, not my own. I don't recall any physical help, but this mystery being, I don't see how I was able to prevent myself from falling. Almost seems impossible, yet here I am, so I guess not. But unfortunately, I have no memory of any physical help, but that voice I will never forget. Good job, buddy. So it's worded a little weird. This guy says his friend warned him that the attic door was broken, probably not to step on it because it was flimsy, and something happened. He accidentally stepped on the door, but instead of falling through, he didn't fall. But the voice that he heard told him to stiffen up, and when he did, it prevented him from falling. And it would have been a 2-story drop into a concrete floor. Yeah, there's just, it's a shame, and a lot of people just saying hey, these are bogus. These are bogus stories, but I don't feel these are bogus at all. Like, it's good information. It's good to know that there's people out there actually experiencing this kind of stuff. So let's get into a little bit more of documented firsthand accounts. So a soldier in Afghanistan wrote anonymously about being pinned down during a firefight in 2007. In his words, quote, I knew I was going to die. I was flat on my stomach and bullets were hitting everywhere. Then someone screamed my name and said, move now. I rolled right, and where I'd been, a grenade exploded. No one was near me, but I heard him. I felt him. So that's kind of, yeah. Geez, I see why people are calling this more like a guardian angel than than how do I put it? Not so much. It's more of a guardian angel than just a person there to help. Because this does seem to be kind of what we're picking at here is people are in perilous situations. I mean, guardian angel. That's the best way to put it. Especially with this guy in Afghanistan. Something told him to move, and where he had been, a grenade exploded. I mean, that just sounds like a guardian angel to me. So here's an even more recent one. A diver off the coast of South Africa in 2016 was caught in a strong underwater current while exploring a kelp forest. She was losing oxygen fast. In her panic, she says she felt someone grab her hand and guide her to an air pocket underneath a rock ledge. That bought her enough time to find her bearings and reach the surface. She says, quote, "There was no one there, but I felt fingers interlock with mine," she said. And there are hundreds and hundreds of stories like these, many unpublished, many only whispered about, which raises the question, if so many people experience it, what exactly is it? So, I know this is just a little bit boring tonight, but bear with me. We're getting through it. This is probably going to be a little short one tonight, but that's okay. You know, it's. I will say again, it's difficult to do these things sometimes when you're by yourself. This is why I optioned to have a second and third host on the podcast, because the banter really helps. So we're going to get into the fourth part of this where we talk about the psychology versus the paranormal. The psychological theories are interesting and often convincing. Extreme stress alters the brain. Under pressure, trauma, and physical exhaustion, the mind may split itself, creating an illusory. That's a strange word. Illusory. Creating an illusory quote, other, that acts as a survival tool. This theory aligns with a known phenomena like dissociation, a phantom limb sensation, and the sensed presence effect, which I think we've all kind of felt it one way or another. You know, I can remember as a kid, I grew up near Detroit, and that close to Detroit, we knew that there were lots and lots and lots of abandoned houses. And there would be days when my very, very small circle of friends, nobody would be there, or no one would be able to go out and play or whatever. You know, as a kid, the best thing you could do is just ride around your bike. So I would ride around my bike, and I would find these old abandoned houses, and I would go in them. And I remember going into these abandoned houses and having two sensations. The first of which was the sensation that somebody was watching me. Like somebody was just around the corner, and I'm about to go around the corner, and somebody's just going to be standing there staring at me. But the other feeling that I had, and the more prominent of which, was the sensation. It's like a voice in the back of my head just saying over and over again, "You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here," over and over again. And there would be times where I would listen to it and leave, but then there would be other times where I would be pushed to explore a little more. And if I ignored that voice in the back of my head long enough, I would physically begin to feel ill. I mean, not like sick, but like slightly nauseous, and my head would swim. And it seemed at that point that the voice in the back of my head wasn't saying I should leave, it was screaming that I should leave. And so I did. So I would leave. And I can remember as soon as I get out the door, that oppressive feeling would just melt away, just fade away, and I would want to leave as fast as I could. So I'd get on my bike and just split. I can remember that plain as day. I brought that up to a few people before, and I mean, maybe it's just me, maybe it's my conscience telling me that I shouldn't be in an abandoned house. Because let's be honest, it's Detroit in the 90s. Probably not a great time for a kid that age to be exploring abandoned houses anyway. There's no telling what type of people you would have run into. All right. So as mentioned earlier, in a 2014 study led by Olaf Blanc in Switzerland, he used brain stimulation to create the illusion of an unseen presence in healthy individuals. The region involved, the temporopartial junction. So that's the part of the brain associated with spatial awareness and self-perception. But let's step back. Even if it's a psychological reaction, it's remarkably specific. It speaks, it guides, it sometimes knows things that the person doesn't consciously perceive. And in many cases, the third man says or does things that go beyond comfort. It offers life-saving decisions. Is our subconscious really that powerful? Or is it receiving help from somewhere else? We really don't know. Some neurologists have hypothesized that the third man is similar to what happens in split brain studies, where one hemisphere of the brain communicates with the other half as if it's a separate entity. Still, the emotional impact, the consistency of the experiences, and the fact that there are so many reported in similar language makes us wonder if we're brushing off something bigger. So let's cross into some deeper waters here. In spiritual traditions, guides and protectors are often ever present. From Christian guardian angels to spiritual allies of indigenous shamanism, the idea of invisible help isn't new. Many experiencers describe the third man not just as helpful, but sacred. Some say that it felt like a deceased loved one. Others claim to have heard a voice they recognized from childhood, long gone. One climber described the presence as a, quote, pure compassion in form. That's pretty deep. That is pretty deep indeed. Geez, we're coming up on an hour, and I'm starting to run out of things to talk about. Yeesh. Yeah, it's not that. Yeah, I'm sorry, these aren't going to be great without the other hosts here. I'm doing my best. Once we get done with this, we will look and see if we can find some images or something. So this pure compassion in form from the previous climber echoes a Tibetan Buddhist belief in tulpas, thought forms so strong that they become semi-autonomous companions. Could the third man be something we project into the world that then becomes real? Another compelling idea is that the third man as a higher self, a version of us unburdened by fear, ego, or doubt, stepping in when the conscious mind begins to fail. This aligns with Carl Jung's theories of the psyche, particularly the concept of the, quote, wise old man archetype that appears in times of crisis. That's interesting. Yes, I do remember reading something about the wise old man. Very interesting. That makes me think of... Wow. Yeah, a couple situations in my life where that's kind of prevalent. So I'll give you at least one. So I can remember in 2001, it was the day of 9/11, and geez, we did a few classes. I was in high school then. We did a few classes, and then the tower thing happened. Um, but I can remember them sending us all home. So I call my mom, and I'm like, "Well, look, they're sending everybody home. I don't want to go home. I'm just going to go into work and get some extra hours at work." So I go into work, and my boss is like, "Well, we don't have a whole lot for you to do, but if you just want something to do, I'll send you out to." So I was a short order cook, and she said, "Well, I'll just send you out to the store, go with my daughter, and we'll send you guys to Sam's Club and stock up on stuff for the business." And I was like, "Cool, yeah, that's no big deal. Something to do. It paid. It's fine. I don't really care. Send me on errands." And so we jumped in our car and we started driving to this to the Sam's Club that was down the road. And we're driving, and this is, to this day, I just still really don't like being a passenger. Um, so we were driving along on a newly paved part of the highway. Well, I say highway, it was a 2-lane road. Speed limit is 55, and the whole time this girl's driving was driving me crazy. Um, Last second stopping, not paying attention, playing with the radio a bunch, and I kept telling her, "Geez, you need to slow down." I'm like, "Oh, geez, that person in front of us is stopping." I was like, "You need to be more mindful of the people in front of you driving." And we get to this intersection. It was a T in the road. We were in the right lane, and the person in front of us was wanting to turn left. So they were wanting to cross oncoming traffic. So they were stopped. And it had just rained, so the road was a little slick. And I can remember seeing the van stopped, solid brake lights. And she's just cruising along, doing speed limit, doing 55. And I remember the last thing I said was, "Those are brake lights." And that's when it clicked for her. She slams on the brakes, and we slide into the rear end of this van, and we hit. And this is what they're talking about here with the wise old man archetype that Carl Jung theorized. I can remember my freshman year. It was a requirement that everybody trying to get their driver's permit had to take like a driving course, not necessarily to teach you how to drive, but to teach you how to be safe in the event of something happening. So if you get a flat, how to change your flat tire. If your car breaks down, how to safely get it off the road. If you're in an accident, what to do. And geez, so that was so this had to have been 2 years after that. And you know how, like, as we get older, especially high school age, you often forget about what you learned months before, let alone what you learned years before. Hadn't thought about it for years and years. This driving course, it was like a driving safety course. But as soon as we hit, my legs flew up, hit the dashboard. I wrecked my legs pretty bad. I'm kind of a tall guy. I'm a little over 6 foot. My legs hit the dashboard. My shins hit the dashboard. Cut my shins. The girl I was with, thank God we were wearing our seatbelts, because we hit so hard that the bus in front of, or not the bus, the van in front of us, it continued to roll up the road for like another 600, maybe 750 foot. It went way up there. And as soon as I was able to think clearly, I went into go mode. I was like, boom, go. My brain assessed the situation so fast. Like, I look over, I'm like, are you okay? She was screaming, she was crying. I was like, okay, calm down. Are you okay? You hurt? Are you bleeding? And she was screaming. I grabbed her arm and I said, listen to me. Are you hurt? Where are you hurt? And she was talking, and I said, I see blood in your mouth. Are you hurt? And she started slurring her words a little bit. Coming to find out, she bit her tongue. And I was like, can you move your legs? Can you move your arms? She said, yeah, I can. I was like, immediately the checklist in my brain started going off. Boom, boom, boom. I remembered every single thing from that safety course, what to do in the event of an accident. I'm like, okay, good. I don't smell gas. So in the event that there is gas, but I don't smell it, we've got to shut the ignition key. I said, she started trying to get out. I stopped her. I said, turn the key back. She said, what? I said, take the key out. Take the key out. Shut the car off. She's like, the car's wrecked. I was like, doesn't matter. Turn the key back. It kills the power. Take the key out. She took the key out, handed it to me. And I made sure that she could get up. I was like, get up, stand up. Are you okay? Check yourself. Are you all right? Got her to the side of the road, helped her sit down. And by then, few people from the business across the street come out. And they're asking me if I'm okay. I'm like, I'm fine. You know, I did not know that my legs were bloody at the point in time. Went straight into business mode. I mean, straight into business mode. And we got I remember, you know, if you can move the car, get it off the road. Don't stop traffic. So we, you know, me and these other guys from this business across the street, we pushed the car, got it off the road, and part of the hood was popped up. And I remembered, try to disconnect the battery cables if you can. I disconnected the batteries and pulled the battery out of the vehicle just to make sure that there wasn't a spark that could potentially catch something on fire. And she's still freaking out. You know, I found out somebody had called 911. So I was doing checklists. I was like, okay, get your phone out, call your mom. I'm calling my mom. The police are on the way. And while we were on the phone, paramedics show up. They took care of her, took care of me. And geez, it was so bad. And it's crazy when you think about something like a seatbelt. Geez, the seatbelt hurt both of us bad. Bruising all across. Like, I was a real scrawny kid in high school, barely weighed 100 pounds. Horrible bruising all across my chest, my collarbone, because my collarbone stuck out real far. Horrible fucking bruising. It looked like I was, looked like I had been beaten with a 2x4. But we were okay. And I will never forget to this day that afterward, one of the firefighters came up and they asked, who took the battery out of the car? I said, well, I did. He said, man, that's one of the smartest things you could have done. As soon as y'all hit the radiator, when we hit, the motor turned sideways. The radiator came in between us and split the gas tank. So the vehicle was leaking gas onto the ground. And he said, if one little spark had jumped out of that vehicle, it would have blown up that entire vehicle. And he said, you taking that battery out was the smartest thing you could have done. And I'll never forget it to this day. And I can remember not even, I couldn't even tell you before this event happened. I couldn't tell you the first thing about that driving course I was in. I had forgotten it just as soon as I passed. I didn't care because all that mattered was I was going to get my driver's license. But this is what we are saying aligns with Carl Jung's theories of the psyche, particularly the concept of the wise old man archetype that appears in times of crisis. So I can attest to that personally. And that's just one of, you know, I could think of a couple others, a couple other very personal, very personal things that have happened to me, where the quote unquote wise old man kicked in. And it seemed like I went straight into business mode, completely outside of my character, but that wise part of my brain kicks in and does what needs to be done. So I can see how this is a direct parallel to the third man syndrome. So I can see how if I was in a state where I was cold and hungry and exhausted and something like this happened, my brain probably couldn't process in a coherent manner what needed to be done. I don't see that my brain would take my thought process back to the driving course I was in to tell me what I needed to do to prevent the car from exploding that we were in that had just wrecked. Do you see what I'm saying? So I can see how if I was cold, tired, and hungry, and then I get in this giant car accident where there's gas leaking out of the vehicle, my quote unquote wise old man archetype in the back of my psyche could manifest itself as a person on the side of the road helping me. So this is a parallel to what we talked about earlier with the other guy who was in an accident. So it was midnight, like he said. So it was midnight after working or going grocery shopping or something like that. And he hit a car going 75 miles an hour, a parked car. And he saw immediately after wrecking, he saw a person in a green Adidas shirt walk up and ask him if he was okay and if he could help. What could he do to help? And I think the first thing he asked was, "Do you need me to call 911?" And he said, "Well, no, I'm already on the phone." I can see that being a direct parallel as well. This is this guy's psyche, his subconscious, his quote unquote wise old man archetype that Carl Jung talks about, knowing that, shoot, I've been in an accident, I've got to call somebody immediately. So if I remember correctly in his story, he said that he was on the phone with his roommate who he borrowed the truck from. I remember that. Let me get another beverage. So yeah, he was on the phone with his roommate who owned the truck that let him borrow the truck. And that was his first phone call he made. But this mysterious person showed up, and first question he asked, "Do you need me to call 911?" He said, "No, because I'm already on the phone with my roommate. This is his truck." So that tells me this is a subconscious part of his brain that knew he was on the phone with his roommate. However, he knew he needed to call 911 too. And as soon as he communicated the fact that he was coherent enough to understand he needed to call 911, but he was already on the phone, this mystery guy in the green Adidas shirt disappeared. Sounds like subconscious mind to me, right? Or am I just talking about outside of my neck here? It's hard to say. It really is. Because you don't know psychologically what somebody's dealing with, what they're going through. And I could see how that could affect a person's perception of a perilous emergency situation. Excuse me. We will touch a little bit more on that here in a little bit. I want to read a little bit the rest of the script. We don't have much left. So we're going to touch on a little thing called a thin place, quote unquote, a thin place. Should we cue the spooky music? Yes. The thin place. So in Celtic lore, there's an idea called a thin place, a location or moment where the veil between worlds is sheer, where the natural and supernatural touch. So maybe, just maybe, third man experiences are thin moments where we are closest to death, closest to truth, perhaps something else reaches through. A universal consciousness, a guardian force, or perhaps a presence that's always there just waiting for us to notice. The fascinating thing is that those who encounter the third man often describe a shift afterward, not just gratitude, but transformation. They no longer fear death in the same way. They often report increased compassion, purpose, and a sense that something greater is at play. Whatever the third man is, it leaves a mark. So, I guess you could say this is inherently true, even with my personal encounter, because after that specific event happened to me, I can remember being really horrible passenger. I was that guy that if I was in the passenger seat, I was constantly stomping on the invisible brake pedal. But that's just me. You know, I mean, the only person's driving that I can tolerate to this day is my wife's. But I could see this. Yeah, that there's. Yeah, we'll touch on more. I could wax a little bit about that for a little while. So we'll get into some final thoughts on this. So, what do you think? Have you ever felt something brush past you in a moment of need? Heard a whisper in a time of despair? Maybe it was your inner voice, or maybe someone walking beside you. Is the third man real or imagined? A miracle or a mystery of the mind? We may never know. But one thing's for sure, those who've met the third man believe. And they carry that belief with them, not as a superstition, but as testimony. Testimony that in their darkest hours, there may still be light. So, that's the end, pretty much, of the script. So, I wanted to touch a little bit more on what I think is really going on here. So the Celts called it the thin place. It's where the supernatural world and the physical world have a thin veil in between, and they're meeting. This is why they call it the thin place. I can see why people are calling this a guardian angel. Because it doesn't seem like this is explicitly happening any other time in people's lives until it's a perilous, life-threatening event. And so we're looking at mountain climbers. So let's break this all the way down, each of these circumstances. We got mountain climbers. Mountain climbers are up there. This guy was on Everest. What year was that? It was the 20s? No, it was 60s. Let me scroll up. 1933. So let me look something up. I want to see if, or see what year they started using oxygen on Everest. What year did they start? Start using oxygen to climb Everest. 1953. However, the technology was invented in 1922, but oxygen cylinders were not used on Everest until 1953. and that is per the Science Museum groupcollection.org. So this was 20 years before the first bottle of oxygen was taken up onto Everest. This mountain climber finds himself in a perilous, life-threatening situation. I feel like a good part of his brain was telling him, look, you're about to die. We need to do something. So I feel like we've got the conscious part of the brain and the subconscious part of the brain having a little fight here. Conscious part of the brain is saying you're dying, you need to get somewhere safe. And the subconscious part of the brain, the part that knows what to do, the quote unquote old man, kicks in and manifests itself as a voice, a guide. And I feel like for Frank Smythe, the Everest climber, this was a little more prominent for him because at this point he was oxygen deprived. Let's see, do you hallucinate during oxygen deprivation? Yes, low oxygen levels, also known as hypoxia, can definitely cause hallucinations. Hypoxia can disrupt brain function, leading to a range of cognitive and perceptual disturbances, including hallucinations. So let's say Frank Smythe, this guy climbing Everest in 33, was up at 28,000 feet and by himself, oxygen deprived. His conscious part of his brain was having trouble functioning because hypoxia, due to low oxygen levels, can disrupt basic brain function. The hypoxia caused him to not know what to do. However, the subconscious part of his brain knew exactly what he needed to do. And it's more like staring off into the dark and your brain putting together pieces of the darkness to make a shape in front of you. The subconscious part of his brain put together something that he needed to survive. Okay? He says he was so convinced of his reality that he broke a piece of cake in half and offered it to his invisible companion. So, we know that hypoxia can disrupt brain function. And we know that basic brain function is eating. It's, it's survival at this point. It's eating, shelter, warmth. So this high up, there is no warmth, there is no shelter. The only thing he could do is eat to try to keep his strength up. So he tries to eat. He gives half to whatever it is that he saw, half of this piece of cake. I like to imagine in almost a romantic kind of way that somewhere on Mount Everest that there is a frozen half piece of cake laying there. And this is Frank Smythe's cake. Because there's no scavengers up there, so it would just stay there forever. Surely it's buried under a couple 100 feet of snow by this point, but still, I like to think it's there. So for me, that kind of explains Frank Smythe's this situation. So let's look at Ernest Shackleton. So Ernest Shackleton was in the same situation. His boat was crushed by ice. He had to leave his boat because it is completely crushed by ice. Him and two other people were the last of his crew. In a last-ditch effort, they decided to walk out across the ice in the direction they thought they needed to go. At this point, we're dealing with cold. So let's look and see if extreme cold temperatures can cause hallucinations. Yes, being too cold can cause hallucinations, specifically as a symptom of hypothermia. When your body temperature drops significantly, it can impair brain function, leading to mental confusion, slurred speech, and even hallucinations. If a hypothermic patient has ceased shivering, he has exhibited a dramatic decrease in mental status, such as, or he has, if a hypothermic patient has ceased shivering, has exhibited dramatic decrease in mental status, such as hallucinations and unconsciousness. Their core body temperature is below 90 degrees, and the patient has severe hypothermia. They were walking across the ice in Antarctica. In what year? Oh my gosh, this was, geez, we're talking early 1916. So they walked for 36 hours straight across glaciers and mountains with no rest, no food, and no guarantee they were going to make it. So you better believe they were cold. They were definitely experiencing hypothermia. I believe this was one of the first very well documented cases of severe hypothermia. The other two guys with them, I believe they lost all of their toes on their feet. Definitely has to do with hypothermia. Cold, exhausted, hypothermic. You know, we're dealing with the same thing as low oxygen here. You know, this was, you know, the animal brain had taken over at this point, and then we're dealing with, you know, how do we force the animal brain to do what it needs to do to survive? Because when it comes to these dire situations, it's all about number one, survival. What can I do to make myself survive? So, Shackleton is cold, starved, lost. I think that the subconscious part of his brain knew where he needed to go, but he was so cold he was not thinking clearly. So a normal person could, you know, I could look at the sun and tell you which direction is north. I can imagine being so cold that I'm not able to discern which direction I need to go. So the subconscious part of the brain kicks in, i.e. the third man. In this situation, I feel like maybe there was a part of his mind that said, I wish we had somebody to show us where to go. And the subconscious part of his mind perhaps created this third man, quote unquote third man, to show them where to go. However, we know that this was not spoken between the three of them, and all three of them felt this third person amongst them. So, I can explain a little bit of what's happening. I can't explain how all three of them saw the same thing. Unless they were all of similar mind and make, in that they were uniquely paired to when their subconscious mind was giving them hints, they all received the same hints from their subconscious mind. I could see that. Sure. That makes sense. That their subconscious, all three of their subconscious minds told them what they needed to do to survive, and that it all happened to be the same thing. You know, early 1900s, during World War I, explorers, surely all of them know how to navigate. Surely they all knew where they needed to go. Their subconscious mind told them where they needed to go. And this is their third man. So let's look at something else here. So yeah, Shackleton, they knew there was a whaling station that they needed to get to. That was the thing. They knew where the whaling station was. They knew how to get there. But I feel like the desperation of them being lost and all that they had gone through has led them to revert to an animalistic brain, but their subconscious knew where they needed to go and manifested this quote unquote third man to guide them. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so the guy in the World Trade Center. Let's read his story right quick. Working in the South Tower of the World Trade Center on the 84th floor, when a second plane hit, he was knocked unconscious by the impact, but awoke to a burning, debris-filled stairwell. He began to descend, but was quickly overwhelmed by smoke and fear. Then he heard a voice urging him to get up, to keep going. He says he felt someone physically guiding him, touching him. He escaped just before the tower collapsed. Okay. The same train of thought. We're in a fight or flight situation. They're still fighting a collapsing building. So the flight aspect is all that's left. And he was so racked by fear that, again, he was in this animalistic brain set, and his subconscious mind knew where he needed to go. I mean, he's descending a stairwell. How confusing can a stairwell be? Go down, right? Yeah, he says that he was overwhelmed by smoke and fear. It definitely sounds like an animalistic brain had taken over at that point. And his subconscious had guided him. I can't exactly explain the physical touching. So this is the part of my explanation where I can't quite explain the physical touch. I wonder if oxygen deprivation can cause physical sensation of being touched. Can we look that up? Let's look it up, see what happens. Will low oxygen make you feel like you're being touched? Okay, wow. Straight up a definition about hypoxia. No, low oxygen levels typically do not cause the sensation of being touched. It causes a variety of symptoms, including breathing difficulty, shortness of breath, confusion, anxiety, rapid heart rate. Some people may experience blue discoloration of the lips and skin, fingernails. Yeah, this doesn't explain the being touched part. I just don't know. So I guess that's the flip side of this coin. Is this paranormal or is it not? I feel like there's a big part of my brain that wants to say that this is just a natural reaction to survival instincts taking over, where your brain reverts to the purest form of survival, but you're not completely overwhelmed by the mindset that perhaps, just perhaps, there's a major subconscious part of your brain that's back there screaming, telling you what to do, and just parts of that screaming is coming through telling you what to do. However, I can't explain the touching. Like, we even had that diver at the beginning of the episode, or the middle of the episode, where she physically felt the fingers weaving in between hers. I don't know how to explain that. So that's just between hypothermia and hypoxia. There's not much that's going to give you the hallucinatory sensation of being touched. So it's really hard to say. However, as we all know, I am a lover of the paranormal, and I'm always going to lean on the side of paranormal. So this brings us to the guardian angel conversation. I will say that I am not a Christian. However, I don't want to discount the fact that there could be, deceased persons watching over us. I have personal reasons for that. I don't want to say guardian angel because it's such a broad stroke. It's hard to put a religious definition on something like this when there are so many definitions of religion in the world as it is. I mean, we're dealing with people in Afghanistan. We're dealing with British explorers. We're dealing with Americans. We're dealing with, every country in the world has gotten a story that has to do with the third man. So I don't feel like angel is the right word. But I think about stories like the guy with the grenade. He was pinned down by fire in Afghanistan. And somebody yelled for him to move now. And he moves and a grenade blows up right where he was. How do you explain that? I can't think of a good reason. Except maybe in his subconscious mind, he knew they were going to throw grenades at a certain point. But how do you predict the future? It's semantics. I mean, it's hard to say. It really is. It's really hard to say. So, personally, I'm going to lean on the side of the paranormal on this one. Now, I do feel like there is a perfectly logical explanation for what we heard today. I mean, 3/4 of it anyway. But my brain tries to put the most obvious explanation to whatever it is out there, and I cannot think what would give hallucinatory sensations of being touched. I just can't. I mean, even guardian angels. I mean, angels don't physically interact with humans as a rule. So it's hard to put that as the explanation for what happens. So with that being said, I'm going to personally go out on a limb and I'm going to say that this is something kind of paranormal. It could be a slew of things. It could be a plethora of things. It could be anything from, I'll go way out on a limb here and I'll say it could be aliens just passively watching the human race and not wanting to, it makes me think of like National Geographic photographers. They're not going to interfere with the natural order of things, but every now and again they step in and help that little penguin. Extraterrestrials are that passive observer, but maybe they actually stepped in and helped a few people here. That could explain, we're dealing with alien technology. That could explain why the person seems like they're always there, but nobody could really see them, or that they were there just out of sight. It could be, so let's check the box for guardian angels. Who's to say that Shackleton didn't have a loved one that he was deeply and personally connected to, that was watching over him on his expeditions, and this was his person watching over him, manifesting themselves, a spirit, showing him where he needed to go. Maybe it was part of the, maybe when you're in the animalistic fight or flight brain, you're able to perceive that, like the Celts say, the thin place. Where you're so close to death that you're still on both planes of the world of the living and the world of the dead, and somebody in the world of the dead decides to reach out and help you. It's hard to say. Or it could be like, Carl Jung says, the old man, the part of the psyche, the part of your brain that knows exactly what to do. Whatever it is, I'm going to call it paranormal. So that's a win for this week. I know. Lots and lots of talking this week. Geez, that was 7 pages of script. Oh my goodness. And that barely cracked an hour. What do we got? Let me see. Hour and 25 minutes. Yeah, I've cut the podcast in half being by myself. Yeah, so it's really, really hard to say. If any of you out there listening have ever experienced the third man syndrome, please feel free to email us and we will talk about it. Let me give you the email. It's beyondtheshadows@gmail.com. Feel free to email us. Email us. Let us know your story. I will read your emails and we will talk about it. If you have ever experienced something like this, email us. Tell us your story. I don't care if it's 4 sentences. I don't care if it's 5.5 pages. Tell us your story. Come on. Email us. Let us know what's going on. We will read it. We will talk about it. Beyond Shadows Podcast at gmail.com. It's BeyondTheShadows Beyond the Shadows at gmail.com. I would love to hear from some people. Geez, we've been doing this for almost a year now, and we have yet to receive a listener email. But that's okay. We're also doing single digit views and plays on YouTube and Spotify together. So, neither here nor there. But I want to hear. I want to hear what everybody else thinks about it. So we might be doing this solo thing for a little while. So if you're listening and you are enjoying the podcast, please feel free to email me. We'll talk about it. We will talk all about it. If you've got a story you want us to talk about, shoot me an email, beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. We'll talk about your story. We'll talk about your experience with paranormal. Whatever you got. If you got something that involves what we talked about tonight, third man syndrome, email me. Give me a shout out. Come on. Let me see if I can. I was hoping I could get together. I'm typing. All right. So, next week we are probably going to talk. Oh no, next week we're doing rapid fire. So next week is the last Sunday of the month. We're going to do rapid fire. I think the week after that, I am planning on. What is the? I've got a partial script already written up. Terraria. Oh geez, the Terraria mud theory. I'm having trouble really piecing this thing together. There's a piece of me that wants to wait until Aeon and them are back, because I would love to hear their theories on this. It might change between then and now. Hard to say, but either way, next week we are doing rapid fire. So I will say again, if you have videos, we're trying to stick to Instagram. So let me pull up Instagram. Let me see what our handle is on Instagram. We are Beyond Shadows Podcast. That is Beyond Shadows Podcast on Instagram. If you find a reel of something paranormal happening, send it to us. We will watch it and we will talk about it live on the podcast next Sunday. And we will tell you whether we think this is real or not, because we are really, really good at picking apart these social media videos. Between Aeon and myself, I have a lot of experience with photography and videography. I've done a decent amount of playing around with video editing, photo editing. I've even begun dabbling in AI to know the limitations of what AI can do when it comes to editing video and photo. So, well, I know a lot of the telltale signs about what happens when things are edited. So if you find a cool video, something creepy and paranormal, shoot it over to us at Beyond Shadows Podcast on Instagram. Look for our logo. You've seen it everywhere. It's one of the logos on this podcast. Hard to mistake us from anybody else. We are not the guys with the generic logo. We got the two skulls. Similar to what you see above me here. So I'm going to do my best to do this outro as good as Aeon does. I'm not anywhere near as good as he is, but I will give it a fair shake. Whether you believe in the unexplained or think there's a logical answer hiding in the shadows, one thing's for sure. The world is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. So thank you for joining us and peeling back the veil just a little more this week. And until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and don't be too quick to dismiss that bump in the night, because you never know what's hiding beyond the shadows. Good night, everybody.
It's alive! It's alive!
A creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Why, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. It's horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.